What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I have been tasked with the challenge to bring you a going first Crusadia profile. So for those of you unfamiliar with this deck, it is part of the World Chalice lore, and on top of that it's designed to be an OTK mechanic deck. However, what I did want to put this build together is I've kind of made it with a balance so that it can go first and or second. I'll talk you through the other options you can put in if you have more of a budget to add to the deck, and I'll also talk about how you can swap it from being a balanced deck to an all-out OTK deck as well. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. With that out of the way, I'm just going to dive headfirst into the profile and show you what we've got. Now, of course, it's probably going to be a little bit more prominent on Master Duel as well, so it's something to consider. You can definitely build it quite like this, and when we get to the hand trap lineup, that's when you're probably going to change it out and start putting in stuff like Maxi, which is legal in Master Duel, and it's probably where you'll get a bit more benefit from being an OTK enabler. So for the Crusadia lineup, which in my opinion will be staple no matter what version you are playing, you are going with triple Crusadia Maximus. Now I know it looks like a warrior, but it's actually a psychic. I would have loved this to have been a warrior because then you could have used reinforcement of the army for it. We do have a warrior in the deck in the form of a Crusadia Arborea, which you could use reinforcement of the army for if you wanted to. I'm personally not in this build just because you need to be a little bit careful around Droll and Lockbird. So for those of you unfamiliar with Crusadia, they all have additional effects that they can provide to the link monsters. They also have the ability to special summon themselves from the hand in defense to a zone a link monster points to. So you can only get to special summon this card once per turn this way, and you get to target a Crusadia link monster you control. This turn, if it battles an opponent's monster, any battle damage it inflicts is doubled. Also, the monster you control cannot attack. Other monsters you control cannot attack, so it basically gives you a one buff, one shot monster, which is where the OTK enabler comes into play, because the idea is that you're going to give that to your Crusadia monster, and then what you're going to do is you're going to be swapping out your hand traps for stuff like Kaijus or just more consistent board breakers. The next free we play is the Crusadia Draco. Now, I've tried to avoid going down a Dragon Link route with this deck, but there is a little bit of an engine that you can utilize. It doesn't really change anything in the main deck. You just pretty much adapt the extra deck as you see fit, and I'll talk to you about that when we get to it. Again, you can special on this card from the hand to a zone alien monster points to. Very, very cool. And then if this card is normal or special, you get to a zone alien monster points to, you get to target one Crusadia card in your graveyard, accept itself, and add it back to the hand. Now, the reason that's so good is because you'll normal summon something like a Maximus, turn this into the Link 1, special this to the zone the Link 1 points to, trigger the Link 1 to search card, and then this will allow you to add back Maximus, which because it was normal summoned and not special summoned via its own effect that turn, you then have another extender to keep going. You can consider something like Parallel Exceed as well, which you'd probably cut down the amount of hand traps in this build, but I kind of felt that Parallel was one of a win more option than it was an absolute necessity, and the hand traps kind of give you a bit more of a one-for-one battle between your opponent. The next one we play a 2 of is the Crusadia Arborea. You can cut this down to 1 if you want to and play in Reinforce with the Army, but I felt 2 was enough because actually getting to 2 is not that big of an issue, and then being able to open up multiple gives you the ability to use it as a normal summon or a special summon. It is the only tuner of the entire deck, so if you wanted to, you could play Ib, which is the Synchro level 5. It does get a little bit specific because then you need a level 2, because when you look at most of them, your Avramax and your Draco are 4, and then you've got Leonus and your Reclusias, which are both level 3s. So you'd need to play an additional level 2 engine, which in the past was actually used in order to get into Ib. So this one again, special summon it from the hand to defense to a zone link monster points to, and then if a Crusadia monster or monsters you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you get to manage this card from the graveyard instead. And then we've got the one Leonus and the one Reclusia. Now, Leolus basically provides the link monster with piercing, which is really, really important when you combo this off with your Maximus, which is what you're ideally trying to get to either your Crusadia Avramax or probably your more consistent OTK enabler, the Equamax. So you want to be able to have this point into a Leonus and a Maximus when it's going to get double piercing damage, and it's going to be a fat stack because it gains the attack of everything it points to. The Reclusia is obviously a little bit more interactive, I suppose. So if it is normal or special to a zone link monster points, so you get to target a Crusadia card you control and a card your opponent controls and destroy them. So obviously it's a nice one-for-one pop, but it's only going to be useful going second. For the Crusadia spells, we've got the 1 Power, the 1 Revival, and the 1 Testament. So you've got 2 quick plays and 1 field spell. Now these are all searched out by the link 2. When we get to it, I'll show you. But the idea is that the Crusadia Power lets you target a Crusadia monster you control. That monster is unaffected by card effects a turn except its own. So it's basically one of the ways to protect from something like Nibiru so that you can then continue to link climb up. Crusadia Testament, you get to activate one of the following effects. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to the activation of your Crusadia monster effects this turn, which is really important. Then also, after damage calculation, if your Crusadia Link monster destroys an opponent by battle, you draw cards equal to that monster's Link rating. So more times than not, when you're declaring your attack, you're probably going to be going for a Link 3 or 4, so you just get to draw quite a few cards. The idea is that in an OTK version of the deck, you're obviously not really worrying about drawing, you're just pretty much focusing on just completing the OTK, so it can get subbed out. For the field spell, all Crusadia Link monsters on the field gain 500 attack, and then you get to target Crusadia Link monster you control. This turn, even if this card leaves the field, it can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. Obviously, other monsters cannot attack, which is fine when you're trying to go for one big boss monster, giving it piercing and double battle damage, and you're just going to go, okay, cool, revival, attack, and then that will help you with your OTK enabler. I would arguably say you could probably cut one of these out. More so than not is the Testament. It's just like one of them push more a little bit. But it is nice when your opponent cannot activate card effects in response to your Crusadia effects. It really just comes down to your personal preference. The next engine that we are playing is the Protective engine. So as you see, none of our monsters actually have effects on normal. Ideally, you want to be saving them for your special. So it does mean you can play the Adventure package, which in the past you did near enough auto lose to Subflight and Nibiru, or it did make it a little bit more difficult because then you'd have to play a Link Spider and everything else. But with the Adventure engine, and with it being relatively cheap, to be honest, it does keep the budget down nice and easily. If you do have a bigger budget, you could look at something like the Horus engine if you wanted to, but I feel that the Adventure engine does the job for you. The idea is that this is just going to set you up a negate, so that when you're going first or second, it sets up a form of interruption, it sets up a form of protection, and then it also gives you the ability to cause your opponent a lot of issues, because then they have to waste their hand traps to try and stop this being built. And once it's built, you can leave it on the board and continue to move up your plays. On top of that as well is if you wanted to leave the token or the Griffin Rider in a zone that your Equamax pointed to, even though they're not going to be able to attack, you're still going to give the buff to the Equamax, which can be very important. Next up for a board breaking option, but it's also great for going first or second, is Triple Super Poly. I just feel in this current format, this is actually a really great card, and that's the balance of being able to go first and second. I didn't want to make this deck only go second. I didn't want to make this deck only go first. I wanted to show that it could be the balance, that it doesn't matter what the dice roll is. You have cards and options available to you so that you can provide the OTK if you need to, but you can also break boards, as well as being able to set a card as powerful as Super Poly means you could technically break a board. And then the best thing about that is when you fusion summon to a zone that the Equamax points to, again, Equamax just becomes even stronger. So not only are you clearing off your opponent's monsters that they can't respond to, but you're also making your main boss monster stronger if you decide to end your board on this, or you'll end on something like a Crusadia Avramax, which means your fusion monsters are going to be protected from attacks. Then for the hand traps, this really does come down to you. Now, if you want to go OTK version, personally, I'd be playing more board breaking options. That's where Interrupted Kaiju Slumber would come into play, all of the different Kaijus as well, because with Equamax, as you can see with its zones, it points one to your opponent. So the idea is you're going to give them a Kaiju in front of the link zone that you're going to summon. You summon down the Equamax and it will gain the attack of that monster that it points to. So more times than not, you don't mind giving them the stronger Kaiju, because then obviously Equamax will be just as strong. I did also consider Link into the Vrains, and the reason I considered something like that was for the ability to play something like Lava Golem to help me break multiple monster boards, but that is something you might want to consider. The only reason I didn't decide to play Link into the Vrains with this build is for the pure fact that the way I looked at it is it became a 3-card combo, because you'd only really want to play the Link into the Vrains when you've already lost your normal summon, used up your normal summon, or done something with it, or you wanted to save your normal summon. So when you're activating Link into the Vrains, it takes a card from your hand, puts it to the board, and then instantly Link summons it. Very nice. But then you're holding back your normal summon for the worst case scenario. So it still means you need 3 cards. You need Link into the Vrains, 1 card that it can summon, and then a backup option if everything goes wrong. Whereas that 1 additional Link into the Vrains could become something more consistent like the Adventure engine that could provide you that protection anyway. So for the hand traps, of course, Triple Ash Blossom, Double Veiler. This is just to show you a variety. Crow, Mourners, like any of these can be bells, they can be Nibiru's if you want to. I feel Nibiru is probably more prominent for going second. One thing to note with Nibiru, unfortunately, Equamax actually gains attack equal to its original attack, and because Nibiru's token doesn't originally have an attack, it doesn't actually gain it. So I thought that was really cool back in the day. I was like, oh, Nibiru's broken. Let's give my opponent a like 20,000 Nibiru token. My Equamax is 20,000. Clear off the Nibiru token, attack the game. Doesn't work that way, unfortunately. And then the best hand trap, in my opinion, Triple Imperm. double talents, and the 1 call by. I would still keep the talents and the imperms and the call by in the deck no matter what you do, but I feel the hand traps can then become subjective as to whether or not you want them as being board breakers or not. So you've got a very nice 9-card slot here that can be insane board breakers. So 3 Interrupted Kaiju Slumbers, 4 Kaijus, and then you can play stuff like 2 Lightning Storms if you wanted to. It really is up to you. You want to maintain your battle phase, which is why you wouldn't main deck something like Evenly Matched in my opinion, but the idea is you're just trying to push for an OTK. So that's it for the entire main deck. Now moving on to the extra deck. Now, like I said at the start, I've tried to keep this relatively budget, which is why you won't see an SP Little Knight, you won't see a Typhoon, you won't see an access code talker. Exact same with Horus. If you're going second as well, you just have more aggression. So for the extra deck, we'll start with our fusion monsters. For our Super Poly targets, we've got the Earth Golem, Agnista, Garura, and Mud Dragon. So you've got 2 generic cards, and then of course with this one, you can actually utilize it yourself because it requires a Cyverse and a Link monster, which some of your Link monsters are. So you can go into battle phase, and then with Equamax, the cards that it points to cannot attack. But the idea is, as long as you're not giving it the effects with Maximus because you feel that's enough, or you already have Super Poly, you can attack with Equamax, and then you can activate Super Poly using Equamax, which will then unlock the ability for the 2 that it points to attack. And that will then give you an Golem Agnista. For the generic Link 2s, we've got the 1 IP Masquerena. I will go through the generics first before I go through the Crusadias. Which can lead you into a Nightmare Unicorn if you choose to play it. And in place of the Nightmare Unicorn, I've actually got a small Guard Dragon Pitsy into Triple Burst, because then this gives you the ability to play a Boral Sword if you want to. The Triple Burst is only in here because you Dragon Lock yourself. And the way you can make this work is you play the Crusadia Spiffer. Always get this one wrong. But this one gives you the ability, once per turn, if an effect monster is special to a zone this card points to, except during damage step, you get to target a monster in either player's main monster zone, accept it, and move it to another main monster zone. So the idea is that what you would do is you would bring down the Guard Dragon, you turn the Guard Dragon into the Pitsy, you then use the Spaffer to move it to one zone, and then it's got a zone that the Pitsy can bring the dragon back from the graveyard. The only issue is you lock yourself into dragons. So the next step you can make is a Link 4 in the form of the Boral Sword, or you would then have to go into Triple Burst, and when you go into Triple Burst, it gives you the ability to make a 2-negate Appaloosa. So that's your balance of a go first route and a go second route. So you've got the balance of what you need to. Arguably, I don't think you absolutely need to play these. If you're like, you know what, I'm happy just going into Boral Sword, then you can cut the Triple Burst out. If you're like, you know what, I just want a defensive option, you cut the Boral Sword out, there's your Appaloosa, and then that's where your Nightmare Unicorn can come into play as well. Carrying on with the Crusadia monster now, we are playing 2 Magius, so this is your starter. So it gains attack equal to the original attack of everything it points to, which is exactly what all of the Crusadia Link monsters will do. And then this one is, if an effect monster is special to a zone this card points to, except during damage state, you get to add a Crusadia monster from the deck to the hand. For the other Link 2 that we play with the Crusadia is the Regulux. So this one, again, if it is a monster or an effect monster is special to a zone this points to, except during damage state, you get to add a Crusadia spell or trap from the deck to the hand. So that's how you can get to any of your spell cards. And then, of course, we've got the Equamax. So this one gains attack to everything it points to. This one has free zones, so it can get pretty buff. And then this one allows you to tribute a Crusadia or a World Legacy monster this card points to. Target one face-up card your opponent controls and negate its effects until the end of the turn. Now, another card you can highly consider is the World Chalice Crown for the deck as well. So that's just one of them ones that lets you special to a zone a Link monster points to, and it provides you with a form of interruption. But again, that's probably focusing more on a defensive route. I just wanted to put in as many hand traps as possible to give you that balance, but flexibility really is up to you. And then probably your best defensive option would probably be going into something like in Mech Knight Crusadia Avramax, for the pure fact that this just means your opponent can't attack everything it points to. It's the only Crusadia monster that doesn't have the ability that what it points to can't attack, which is really cool. And if it is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, or just by your opponent's card, you get to target a card on the field and shuffle it into the deck. So it's a very defensive one that stops your opponent attacking stuff. It's basically a mini towers, which is really kind of cool. And then obviously during the next turn, you can then use this as link fodder to go into an Equamax if you need it to push for the OTK. But other than that, you still got your super polys, you've got loads of your other zones that are being opened up, and then they can just attack. So it's only really the Crusadia Link 1, 2, and 3 that the monsters it points to can't attack, but it gains the attack of what it points to, and then your Avramax just kind of opens up the door and is like, I can do whatever I need to, and I can protect your other monsters from being destroyed. So it's a really kind of cool deck. So massive shout out to Kyron who helped me kind of put this list together. We was going back and forth about whether we wanted to make it focus on OTK, what type of budget we wanted to consider in mind, and ultimately what it comes down to is at the end of the day, if you're going to play Crusadia, you're probably going to play it for a little bit more fun and just nostalgia. So it's only going to be one of the ones if you already have the high-level competitive cards in the form of like the Horus cards, SP Little Knight and everything like that, that you're going to go, right, I want to play fun, I'm going to play that. So we kind of felt that the player base or the audience for this deck would probably be a little bit more budget focused, maybe a little bit more Master Duel focused, which is why we're trying to keep all that into consideration. And like I said, I had a request to try and make it more go first focused than OTK second, because, and I agree, the deck was designed to be an OTK second deck, so it's a little bit more tricky to make it go first. And that's what we found out in the past. When you were playing this deck as an OTK enabler, back in the day, people were like, they would make the deck go first, knowing that its boards weren't going to be anywhere near as strong. And then when Nibiru got introduced, it was just so much harder for the deck to play through Nibiru. Obviously, it got a little bit better and easier over time, but it's just one of the ones that you kind of have a balance of doing what you need to. So there's a lot of very basic combos that come off the back of the Crusadia cards, because as you've already seen, a Crusadia can then lead you into, so you need 2 cards, but you'd basically just go a Crusadia into, I'll show you now where we've got it actually. So let's say we start off with something like Maximus, just zoom it out a little bit. Start off with a Maximus, you normal summon it down, you turn it into, let's go with Maximus and Abora, so any other Crusadia name. Turn it into a Magius, then all you need to do is special summon a monster to a zone it points to, which is why the Parallel XZs can be quite helpful. You'd then target a trigger off the Magius to search you out a card, so you'd go search out a Draco, and then what you could do is you can link these 2 together just to kind of clear off the zones. Go into your link to, wherever it may be, Regulux. You'd then special summon down Draco. Obviously, if you've already opened up Draco, you'd save it, but the idea is that this would then add you back the Crusadia that hasn't used its special summon effect for the turn. You'd trigger the Regulus effect. This will then allow you to get one of your spell cards. So if you are fearing in the Nibiru, you'd go for Power to protect. This one just gives you a stronger monster outright, and then obviously you've got your Testament. And you can hold these back, you can play them, it really doesn't matter. Probably because we're going first defensively, you'd probably want to take the Power to set it. And then again, what you do here is you just put these 2 together, you go into your link 3, which can be your Equamax, special summon down the Maximus. Obviously, this is more of an aggressive design, but then you can turn your Maximus into any kind of link 1 that you need to that is relevant. So you probably go into a Magius. The only downside of this is you've used both your Magiuses, which is why you'd consider playing a 3rd one. And then you'd put these 2 together and you could go into an Avramax. Obviously, your other option is an Appaloosa, but a 2-negate Appaloosa isn't that great. But at least with this, you've got a bit of protection here. You can use the power to negate it. And you'd still have 3 additional cards to play around with. So they can be like more extenders, they could be more Crusadias. You've got the Arborea in the graveyard as well to protect from destruction. So you've got a lot to play with, but this is the basic line. Obviously, if any of these are your adventure package, you can build the adventure package off the back of this as well. You could probably end on the Equamax, because the Equamax will still have that ability to tribute and negate as a quick effect, which can be very, very helpful as well. Gives you a bit of change, bit of something different. And I really do like the artwork and definitely the lore behind the Crusadias. It's probably like my favourite one of all of the World Legacy ones. Like when you consider you've got Crawlers, you've got Orcus, you've got the World Chalice, and then of course you've got the Crusadias. I feel that this is probably one of my favourite ones. I just liked how every one of the cards was a nice little upgrade, how they all kind of turned into their, when they got access to the Chalice, they all turned into upgraded versions of themselves. So just giving you a little bit of a history lesson on this one. So if they all look familiar, obviously you've got your Magius is Reclusia, Arborea is your Spathia, your Leonus is your Regulux, and then I believe, if I remember correctly, I know Maximus is Avramax. I can't remember who Equamax is off the top of my head. I think Equamax is just, maybe, I can't remember if it's a Maximus variant. It could be a Maximus variant, but either way, you get the point. I digress. I'm just going off on a tangent. Anyway, I hope this has been enjoyable. I hope it's given you like a bit of an insight into the deck. I know I had a couple of people requesting this build. I tried to look online. There wasn't many builds around. I feel a lot of it has been shifted into Master Duel, which is completely fine. But I still think the deck is incredibly fun, very, very powerful. And I like the ability now that we have that you can make it go first, go second, budget, no budget, you name it. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. If there is any questions, put them in the comments down below. As always, I'll be more than happy to answer them. But for now, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.